The facts of selling a business is only 10 to 20% of people actually sell. So if you start looking at that with the failure rates we have in small business, which is up to 90% over 10 years, you've got this 10% of business survival that finally gets there. And of those, 10 to 20% actually go through and sell. The question is, why would you bother with strategy? And it's pretty simple. The question of why I would invest time in working out what I want to do next, what I should be doing with my business, and where is my business heading. Now, where that comes from is people assume that you're running a business and you're going to sell that business one day. But actually, the facts of selling a business is only 10 to 20% of people actually sell. So if you start looking at that with the failure rates we have in small business, which is up to 90% over 10 years, you've got this 10% of business survival that finally gets there. And of those, 10 to 20% actually go through and sell. So what we've got to ask ourselves is why are we building a company? And how do I get myself into that 10, 20%? And particularly when you know how much work it takes to grow a business, you need to think about building it for the best exit you can get, whatever that is, whether that's you're selling to someone independently, whether you can have a trade sale, whether you can IPO, whether you can sell it to whatever. Without that plan, you're essentially using all your energy, your capital, your resources, and your risk in the prime earning years to build an asset that may or may not get you an outcome. And the problem with that, and why most businesses actually are built like that, and particularly in small businesses, is that not many of them sell, so people don't expect to actually sell them. They assume one day, hey, I'd like to sell now. They go to a broker, they speak to some people, and they realize my asset isn't actually worth that much. So the question becomes, if you were to buy a house, would you be happy to pay the mortgage down on that house and then get to the end of that period and suddenly go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give it back to the bank for nothing. You've gone to all this effort to earn money, to pay down the mortgage, to finally own something and then essentially give it back. And most people would say, no way. If I go to all that effort, there's no chance I'm just giving it away, which would obviously be sensible. But when they come to building their business, that's exactly what they do. They sit there and they say, well, I'm going to run a company. I'm going to take all this risk. I'm going to go through all this stress, all this anxiety. I'm going to work through multitudes of problems to finally get to a point to say, you know what? I don't want anything for this. And it seems ridiculous, right? Absolutely ridiculous. If you actually think like that at the beginning of your business, you wouldn't start a business in the first place. So there's a delusion of I will sell, but no further thought until you come to a point where you're thinking of selling. What you have to start thinking about is from day one, how will I sell this business? And you won't have the answers, don't get me wrong, but it then leads back to, well, the importance of building a strategy and understanding your endpoint, because all the decisions that come up during the growth of that business are essentially aligned to the endpoint you want. So if you're someone who goes, I want to have a business that I never sell, great, that's an option. What do you need to do? Well, I need to understand at some point this business needs to be under management, because if I don't get it to under management, it's a matter of time before life circumstance gets you. You may have to take some time off work. Unfortunately, some people get sick. Sometimes you need a break. The industry changes, situations change, but you have to assume that, like every single other person on the face of the earth, some form of disruption is going to happen over your lifetime. And if my business cannot survive me not being there, it's not a business. You're self-employed with this huge amount of risk waiting for this ticking time bomb, which is really hard to think about. But if you're looking at your asset, your company to build and go, well, I want to retire off this. I want money coming in. I want to start working less. I don't want to do the 80 hours a week. I want to start getting back to a manageable work week. Well, you have to then build it to put it under management. The great news is, if you take that approach now anyway, you then have a much higher opportunity to sell a business, because a business that's under management actually has a much higher value for obvious reasons, because the buyer pool is completely different. You can sell it to another business. You can sell it to somebody who's an investor. So you're actually increasing the odds of getting a return for all the effort that you've put in. So if you're sitting there and going, I've been running my business, but I've actually never really put much thought into, do I want to sell it? What do I want to do with it? What's my end game? Think about your strategy. And frankly, you're probably sitting there going, to be honest, I don't really have a strategy. I sort of know I want to grow it. So this is why I encourage you, but more forcefully than that, do your strategy. And there's no excuse anymore. Get your strategy in place. It's obviously the reason why we built Backable, but there's other places you can go and build strategies. Not as good as Backable, obviously, but you must know where you're heading, and you must not only integrate what you think you want to do, but how does it fit your entire lifestyle? Do I have a family? When do I want to sell? How do I want to sell? What's an offer I would take today that would be too good to be true to say no to? Because if you start understanding all these things, understanding the parameters you work under, building a company becomes much simpler. Every decision is a yes or no answer. Does this align to my goal? Yes or no? I've seen people grow businesses and make decisions because they just wanted to be bigger and make more money. And it ended up just leading to depression. Because what they really wanted was more of their time back, more freedom, less hassle. And they weren't prepared to go through that period where you have to recalibrate a company of a different size. So you need to be clear on, what do you actually want right now? And what's the path that makes decisions towards that goal? As soon as you get that level of clarity, magical things happen. Alignment of who's a great customer, who's not. How this part of the business needs to run. Should I invest in this new system or process? Because at the moment it's expensive, but unless I know I want to put my business under management, or I've got this goal, or I want to scale it, then you may not need it. Clarity in why and what you are building makes building businesses so much simpler. Everyone loves an owner, particularly investors and buyers, that know exactly what they've built, why they've built it, and why it operates the way it does. The beautiful thing about this is such a minuscule amount of people actually do it, that the opportunity you have by just getting clarity in those areas is a significant strategic advantage. If you were to race your business against your business, so think of that. It's your business versus your business, same resources, same person, same you running it. Nothing changes from this point in time. One of those businesses gets clarity, gets direction, gets understanding of where it's heading. Fast forward 10 years, where are those businesses? This business that doesn't have any of that will not win. They are no chance to win. Not even with dumb luck. And I'll tell you why. Even if they were exposed to different opportunities, this business will learn from what that business is doing and change strategy, adapt strategy, and make it work and amplify it 10 times faster, because it's got clear direction on how those strategies and opportunities could work towards their goal. You never lose by having clarity and direction in a company. Complexity simplifies. Understanding of where you're going simplifies. Risk minimizes. So if you're wondering, why do I feel so overwhelmed? Why is this so tough? Why does every day feel like I'm just chasing my tail? Ask a simple question. Where am I actually heading? And where's the clarity of my direction? I bet when you can answer that clearly, half the things that take up your anxiety, stress, and worry disappear. Have a look at getting some clarity around your strategy and where you're heading. As soon as you've got that in, you will become a very, very powerful business. Good luck with it.
Now, there's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a business by yourself. Not the work exhaustion, the alone exhaustion. Backable is your AI co-founder. It knows your business, your goals, what you need next. It's not a tool, it's a partner that's always there. It's free to start. Just go to backable.ai. The link's in the show notes.